Hey, boys and girls, it's Nancy A. Shenker, also known as the Geezerproofer, here with another episode in which I will inspire you to be a beezer, somebody who be curious, be in the moment, be active, as opposed to a geezer, somebody who's just stuck. And you could be a geezer at any age. You could be a geezer at 28 or at 68, which I happen to be. And since I've been recording, I've had a variety of guests of all ages talking about things and people and habits that just help you be a beezer and live life as a beezer. I'm super excited about today's guest. We actually had to reschedule because she was on her way to a naturist. Did I say that right, Suzanne? A naturist retreat, which basically means people just hang out naked. She lives in London, as in London, England in the UK, but is originally from New York. And I just kind of LinkedIn stalked her because I liked her energy. And she's part of that community of people who are over a certain age who are still living their best lives. So the title of this, which I probably will get wrong, but it's basically something having to do with MILF porn, music, and entrepreneurship, all of which are things that Suzanne knows a lot about. So without further ado, my guest today, Suzanne Noble. And if you could just tell our listeners who you are, what you do, and a little bit about your philosophy of life after 50.
Sure. So my name is Suzanne Noble, and I do three things. I always say to people, do you want me to start with the most fun one first, which was the one that you started off with? So I'll start with the fun one first. The fun one is that I have a TikTok channel and my own podcast called Sex Advice for Seniors. I wouldn't say it was MILF porn at Nancy. I would say
no, that's just a topic we will talk about later.
It was. I wasn't sure whether you were referring to that.
Oh no, not at all.
And it, it's kind of fun little short videos and podcasts with experts talking about sexual health, wellness, and dating and relationships over 50. And I'm a professional singer. I do a show with a pianist called The Dirty Blues Show, and I sing filthy songs from the 1920s to 40s and perform mainly around London in cabaret clubs and pubs and places like that. And then finally, last but not least, which is a subject very close to my heart, is that I've been self-employed since I was in my 20s. I'm now 63. And with my colleague, Mark, I run a government-funded program called Startup School for Seniors, which helps people over 50 take an idea and turn it into a business.
That's terrific.
Me.
Yeah. And it really checks all of my boxes because the Geezerproofer is about life, sex, and tech after 50. And we're living in a very tech-centric world. So if you're going to start a business today, we can kind of work backwards. You know, I would argue that having basic tech skills is essential to any business, even if you're running a retail store or you're selling stuff that you make at home, knowing how to at least manage the production of a Shopify store, take credit cards. Like tech is embedded in everything today.
Yeah, absolutely. And we find that, the big misconception, of course, is that older people can't do tech, right? And I don't know about you, but I first encountered the internet in the mid-90s. I had my first website with my then PR agency in 1995, which at the time my ex-husband, who I was working with then, said, we need a website. And I said to him, why? Why do we need that? Why are you talking about that? But, I've grown up around tech, so I'm really not frightened about it at all. And my father, who is 86, he's not frightened of it either. And I really get quite angry with people who go, oh, but you guys don't really, boomers, you guys don't do tech. No, we've been doing tech before you were born.
We invented tech.
We invented tech, okay? We invented it. So I have to always remind people that come to startup school that say, I've never used Zoom before. I've never done this. I'm like, this stuff is easier to use than it's ever been.
I know.
We are going to make it so easy for you. You are not going to find it frightening.
Last week, I challenged myself to get better at posting stories and reels. And Alexa, who's one of the women who works at Pod Populi, my recording studio, I said, bear with me. I'm not a native speaker of digital. So pretend that like I'm speaking Spanish and you're trying to teach me English. So if you can just like really slowly and clearly explain to me how I put a link into my Instagram story. And she was amazing. And now, I wouldn't say I'm a pro. I still have some work to do, but it was all of 5 minutes working with the right Gen Zer who was going to treat me with respect as opposed to rolling her eyes. So thank you, Alexa. But yes, you're never too old to learn new stuff. I got my mother her first tablet when she was 94. And she called it her Slate. She was adorable. And she had, the funniest is she had a tremor. So when she went to swipe on pictures, she was like swiping all over the place. So her caregiver put it in a box so it would stabilize it. So there are lots of opportunities for new products related to technology, especially for people who've never used it before. Because once you master it, it's very intuitive. We learned how to do
and if it's not, it's badly designed, is my view.
Exactly.
Kids won't be able to use it either. So I always say to people, it's not your fault if you think this is hard to use. Somebody designing this probably wasn't considering the range of people that might want to use this and wasn't designing it for that group of people, right? But that's not your problem. That's his or her problem.
And it's also learning style. Like I don't learn by watching YouTube videos. I learn by having somebody sit with me and show me how to do it on their phone, and then I mimic it on my phone. So everybody has a different learning style.
Totally.
All generations just need to respect what the other generations know. I'm actually going to be doing a live program around that topic called What's Your Superpower for a nonprofit that I'm involved with. And it'll be an intergenerational knowledge sharing where we will learn from each other things that you might know as a Gen Zer that I don't know at 68 and vice versa. So let's we're going to do this in reverse so that people will listen to the end so we can get to the topic of MILF porn and sex and the stuff that people really want to hear about. So the middle one, singing in public. How long have you been a stage performer? When did you start?
Yeah, so I started singing. I started singing when I was a kid. And my mother reminds me that at 6, I used to entertain her friends at parties. And then in my 20s, I did a lot of singing, session singing, and I sang with various groups. And I had my own group called the Dirty Blondes with my friends. And we did 3-part harmonies. And so I was very active performing and singing in my 20s. And then my kids came along and I basically just hummed along to the radio. I didn't really have time for it anymore. And then, of course, the menopause arrived. And with that, my vocal range just kind of dropped an octave. And suddenly I was trying to hit notes that I could have hit quite easily before, and I didn't know how to. And so I really struggled with, maybe you're never going to sing again. But I really missed it. And so in my late 50s, I happened to see this band called Never the Bride with a fantastic vocalist called Nikki Lambourne that my friend had taken me to see. And I went up to her after the show. She was a woman herself in her 50s, big rock voice, amazing. And I just said, God, I really miss this singing. And I used to be a singer. And she said, well, come see me. I'm a singer. I'm a vocal coach. So eventually, she was very expensive, but eventually my friends and my kids all gathered together and paid for 3 lessons on my birthday. And that was March 2018. And over the course of a few months, she started working with me and asked me to bring along some music that I could sing along to. And I took some old records that I had, which were these dirty songs, and had them had a guy just make accompaniments for me on a USB stick, which I took to Nikki's and I played those and I sung along. And she said, what are these crazy songs? Like, where did you get these songs? And I said, well, I had this record called Copulating Blues since my 20s, and I just thought it'd be kind of fun. Anyway, long story short, she asked me to come and sing at one of her gigs in between her sets, and the venue offered me a show. And she did that a number of times, for which I'm incredibly grateful. And each venue offered me a show. So after that, I had to get some music together and find someone that wanted to play with me on the piano. Found this young man called George Webster, who's amazing. We've been playing together now for 6 years. And yeah, it all kind of took off from there. So my first show after taking a break was December 20th, 2018.
That's awesome. And I don't know if you know, I started doing stand-up comedy a couple of years ago. I just came up with my second gig. I'm going to be workshopping it and then taking it on the road. So it's a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. I've always been funny, but I've never really been the person on stage. I was always the director or the prop master or the writer. So this is all very, very new to me. And I kind of like it. You know, being on the podcast was also a big step for me, putting on the headset, sitting in front of a mic. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you become. And it's not really about ego. It's about doing something that you love to do and hearing the roar of the crowd or the feedback. The other thing you hit on, which I think is so critical, is that nobody talks about the fact that as you get older, it's like going through a reverse version of puberty. So people are constantly commenting on the fact that my voice has gotten deeper and throatier. My kids are always asking me if I have a bronchial infection, but this is just my new voice, which I kind of like. And so I'm just going with it. I mean, I don't sing, I just talk, but the throatiness is becoming part of my new brand. It's got like a little Lauren Bacall edge to it. The other thing I love that you said, which is a really good segue into the sex portion of our discussion, is there is a lot of really naughty stuff out there from the 20s, which was the first era of liberation. You know, you look at some of the early burlesque performances. Gypsy was always one of my favorite movies when I was a kid, the original Gypsy with Natalie Wood, you know, because this whole notion of women taking their clothes off to make a living. And I love old Westerns. If I lived in the Wild West, I was definitely either like an Annie Oakley type woman or a brothel owner, or maybe I was both. Because, you know, learning how to incorporate sexuality into your day-to-day lives without shame, with candor. And that's a lot of what I'm calling my Hot Woman Summer episodes are about, are people who are living. Someone told me I'm not supposed to say alternative lifestyles, so I won't, but living lifestyles that most people would like blush at or think are weird. But the more I do these episodes, the more I meet people who are respectable, accomplished professionals who just do things in their spare time that are not like conventional vanilla things, like going to your naturist retreat. So if you could just tell our audience about this place in France, because once you told me you were going there, I Googled it and was pissed that you didn't invite me along, because if I didn't have recordings to do, I would have hopped on a plane. So
and you would have loved it. So crazy. So the Cap d'Agde, as it's called, or people call it the Cap, is a naturist village. It's actually a whole town in France. And during the high season, which is July and August, there are as many as 40,000 people that live there during that period of time. So you do your food shopping, you're eating out, everything totally nude, except in the evening where it becomes like fetish wear and sexy clothes. It's very French. I mean, it's all, you know, all bodies, all shapes, all sizes. I'm just writing a little piece at the moment about it, actually. And I was just saying, you know, the other night I was sitting at this restaurant and there was this woman sitting opposite me. She was quite obese. She was wearing a black mesh top. I mean, calling it a top is actually giving it more credit than it's due. It was just a piece of mesh, right? That was sort of hung together with bits of string. She's just sitting there totally naked, nothing on the bottom, right? Eating dinner with her husband. who I think, because most of the men, it's very sexist as well. Most of the men are just like in chinos and a polo shirt. So, the women are all like wearing nothing and high heels and sexy, transparent clothes and stuff. And the men just kind of look like they always do. And that's kind of the way it is in the evening. During the daytime, as long as the weather is hot, then everybody just takes their clothes off, and that's the way it goes. And you have to get a pass to get in. And if you're staying outside the village, then it's like 52 euros for the week to be able to go into the village every day. And you go through a gate, and once you're through that gate, the rule is that providing it's hot, you have to take your clothes off. That's it.
So it's like naked Disney World.
Yeah, I mean, there's no theme parks or anything, but I mean, it's a lot
that could be painful. The bumps on the roller coaster. And I'm not sure.
I would say it's a human zoo. It is a human zoo. I met somebody on the first night that I was there, just for a drink. This guy had never been, and he just said to me, "I'm not sure I can take this for more than a day."
Are there tour guides? Like if you're a newbie and you're going there for the first time, is it better to go with somebody who's been there before as your Sherpa?
Well, there's a lot of WhatsApp groups and stuff that are around. So I joined a WhatsApp group where people are posing all sorts of questions like, what should I wear? And,
Nothing.
And what club should I go to? And so that was, that's as far as it goes. But no, there's not really any tour guides as such.
And so what are some of your other favorite places that you visited that are not like traditional tourist vacation spots? Are there any others in Europe that you would recommend?
No, not really. I mean, I've been back to the Cap 7 times now, and most people go year after year. I mean, I only go for a few days it's like having an injection of body confidence, because honestly, for anyone who's never taken their clothes off in public like that and is worried about their lumps and bumps and anything that's going on. And I know that lots of menopausal women that I speak to, especially around the sex stuff that I do, tell me that their lack of confidence around their body is a lot of what's stopping them from having good sex or any sex, right? It's just, if they're single women, they're worried about taking their clothes off and all of that. And once you've been to a place where everything is on display, you realize that no matter how great lots of women look with their clothes on, when they take them off, there's still stuff going on, right? There's still a bit of cellulite. There might be scars. There might be some stretch marks, whatever. Like, we're all human and we've all got these different bodies. And one of the things that I really do love about the place is how people that are, on the large side are not like traditionally what we would call beautiful, feel confident enough to be able to walk around without their clothes on. And I think it's really something quite special.
Yeah. And you hit on something that's really powerful. As many of my listeners know, I accidentally gave myself an Ozempic overdose about 3 weeks ago. I kind of fell prey to the peer pressure. I saw a selfie in which I noticed that I had put on a lot of weight since last year. And I thought I would do the fast track, shoot myself up with a little bit of Ozempic, medically supervised. And I misunderstood the instructions I was given, which one could argue were not as clear as they should have been. And I accidentally took 9 times the dose.
Oh my God.
It's finally almost out of my system. I learned a very, very valuable lesson, which is that I need to learn to love my body as it currently is. And I'm back to the gym. I'm lifting weights. I'm eating clean. And I've already seen the difference in just the week and a half that I've been back doing it the natural way. So I'm not judging, if your doctor prescribes Ozempic or one of the other drugs because you're pre-diabetic, you're under medical supervision, go for it. But this insane pressure, in fact, I'm very upset by the woman. I mean, I don't know her. I don't really care about her, but the woman they chose to be the Golden Bachelorette is in her 60s.
I've not seen any of that. So.
And she looks like a pencil. Like you want to just sit on her chest and feed her a burger because she doesn't look happy. She doesn't look fulfilled. Like how can how can you be under that much pressure to look the way you did when you were in your 20s, when you're now in your 60s? So just own it, be healthy, aspire to live a long life.
Yeah. And going to a place where you see that so many other people are just really, you know, they're in couples, they look happy, they're confident, you know, obviously some of them are engaging in sexual conduct right in front of you, which is kind of interesting as well, if you're into that sort of stuff. But, you know, it's not for everybody, but it's unlike any other place I've been to on this earth. And honestly, as the average age there, I would say, is probably hovering around 50. It's a really great place to see a lot of older people just living life in the way that they want without any judgment attached to it, just having a good time. And
if you happen to live in the U.S., there are naturist retreats here. There are naturist hotels. There's a naturist cruise now that's been in the media. So, you know, the best thing to do is just start out at a nude beach and see how comfortable you are, which is all I've done to this point. And I was pretty comfortable just, you know, sitting topless in Hawaii on this great black sand beach. And I would be, kids cover your ears, but I would be tempted to like ratchet it up a notch for sure. And there are all kinds of naturist places. You just have to, like everything else in the world, you just have to Google it. So if you happen to know somebody who would want to be a guest on my show, specifically talking about swinging, that would be awesome. I have yet to find a guest on that topic. I just did a session on...
Oh, I'm happy to talk about that. I mean, I don't have a problem.
All right, cool. We'll book you again for later in the summer for sure. So the MILF porn part of the title. Admittedly, you're from marketing, I'm from marketing. It was clickbait because I knew that like hashtag MILF porn is going to get some eyeballs. We did talk when we did our pre-interview about this fascination that a lot of younger men have with older women. And if you Google MILF porn, I don't suggest you, not you personally, but listeners, you're going to and then end up getting all kinds of pop-ups. So unless you're really serious about it, don't do it. But there is a category called MILF porn, and it's younger men who are sexually attracted to older women. It's nothing new. There was an old movie called Harold and Maude, which was terrific. If you haven't seen it, it's held up well to the test of time. But what's your theory as somebody who is a, you know, practicing sexologist and author of a book? What do you think that's all about?
Oh God. I mean, there's when I was 50, my boyfriend was 33 and he's always had a thing for older women. And in fact, he's now my best friend and he's currently living in my flat while his flat's getting renovated. So, you know, part of his history was that was one of his earlier sexual experiences and it lodged in his brain. I also have this thing called the 38-year-old man syndrome, which is that I know that there's a certain point where young men have to choose, right? As they're approaching 40, okay, their own clock is ticking, thinking about making babies and a family, right? And we pose no threat to them, right? We're just going to have a good time. We're not going to procreate. We're not going to do any of those things that give them so much brain damage at that age. And I suspect there's a few years where they have to decide, okay, am I ready to settle down or not? And we make life really easy for them by just wanting to have fun, right?
Yeah, and also
anything with
to some extent being mentors and like cool mom figures that, you know, we can teach them stuff and, you know, educate them about things. Well. I mean, I had a 20-something-year-old guy tell me that he was just so burned out on dating women his own age because he was an entrepreneur and there was just all of this drama. I did not go out with him because my rule of thumb is you have to be at least 10 years older than my older daughter to even be considered these days.
I'm with you on that one.
I'm not looking, when I used to get hit on by young men on the dating apps, I would say, unless you're looking for an internship, I'm really not interested. But yeah, there's a lot of that out there. And I think the dark side of it, though, is young men who are watching too much porn starring older women. You know, it's like the Graduate, Mrs. Robinson, you know, that they get so fixated that it's not really about the person, which you could say about all porn, that if you go too far down that rabbit hole, it's about bodies. It's not about the head or the heart.
No. And I mean, look, with my TikTok stuff, for some reason, I'm not joking, every day, like 20 men in Africa say they want to marry me, right? Who are in their 20s and 30s. And my friend is like, oh, they're all bots, Suzanne, they're all bots. They may be bots. I don't know. I mean, I don't think they are, but I think that they probably are young men who are looking at me and thinking that maybe I've got money. I don't know. And maybe I'm going to give them some life experience that they're going to struggle to find in their own town. I mean, honestly, I find the whole thing kind of amusing, but I also know that, there's like you said, an older woman can teach you things that you might not know, right? If she's aware of her own body and knows about those things herself, which isn't true for everybody. But I know that certainly for lots, when I started dating again after my divorce, which was over nearly 25 years ago now, I started to get some confidence and develop a literacy around talking about sex that I didn't have during my marriage. So I just, on the dating scene, I was like, this is a no risk situation here. I can put it out there, and tell people this is what I'm into, this is what I like. And if you don't like it, you can go away, and there'll be somebody else that might like that. So that's good. And I think that was, when the internet came along and online dating started to become a thing, I was very involved in that in the early days. And, and to some extent still, tap into that. But I think that they really like the fact that we're so confident.
Yeah. And, we talked before about how our generation invented the internet. We also spearheaded the sexual revolution back in the 70s. And in many ways, politically and culturally, there's been a little bit of a backsliding to Victorian thinking about sexuality, especially in the LGBTQ community. And there's a lot of judgment. And I've been a little bit careful as I've started tiptoeing through my podcast into topics that had previously have been taboo, to really give people our age or, of our generation, more of a comfort level. I have dated a couple of guys over the years who were married to women who then discovered that they were lesbians later in life. Or there was one guy I remember whose wife had been a nun. They got married, they had kids, and then she discovered she was a lesbian. So, people change as they get older, and we are the first generation of women who will live to be close to 100 in record numbers. So it's silly to think that the life that you lived in your 20s and 30s and 40s and even 50s is going to be the same life you're living in your 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Yeah, completely. And I always say to people, look, this is the opportunity to design the relationship that you want. We don't have to keep replaying the old frameworks that we grew up with around monogamy, around, same gender relationships, whatever. We can actually decide for ourselves now what suits us, what works for us, what do we want? And I think that we have the opportunity, thanks to things like dating apps and thanks to, the media telling us that there are all these things out there that we can try. We can decide for ourselves whether we want to, do things differently. And
YouTube channels where you could watch. Yeah. And as I mentioned the other day, Lisa Ling has this great series on Oprah Network, Living in America. And there was an episode she did about 12 years ago about the swinger lifestyle. And it was really well done. And it showed 3 different couples from 3 different socioeconomic backgrounds who were all living the lifestyle. So, a lot of this stuff, it's just really a matter of learning about it, deciding what's right for you at each stage in your life, and not being ashamed and sweeping it under the rug, because that's when you could really start to be your best version of yourself, because sex is just a part of life.
Yeah, I mean, through doing the podcast, I've interviewed a number of experts, and I suspect it's not surprising that a lot of the people that I speak to talk about some of the challenges that especially middle-aged women face around sex and experiencing discomfort and all sorts of sexual health problems that arise because of menopause, such as vaginal atrophy or vaginismus or all sorts of things. And it's really opened my eyes to the fact that there's just such a lack of information around sex in later life. I mean, I was just in France, like I said, I got back yesterday, and one of my oldest friends was just saying to me, oh, how can I overcome some of the discomfort I feel? And I was like, well, just take vaginal estrogen.
Yeah.
Because it's what'll sort it for you.
And it's funny because I just,
what is that? You know? And I explained to her, it's not the same as, traditional HRT. It's just delivered in a pessary, la, 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 la. And I had to go into this whole thing. And it's amazing to me, the number of people that I speak to and they're going, I never knew about that.
Or they're afraid of it because they've read something in the media. Actually, my former gynecologist in New York, who's one of my dad's residents, is named Stephen Goldstein, MD. You can Google him. He's written a bunch of books about menopause. He's one of the world's leading authorities. And when I was in my 50s, he's like, are you having sex? And I was like, well, not at the moment, but I would like to. And he got me gave me a prescription for a hormone that I've been taking religiously. And, there's no reason why I have to, as I jokingly say, when you hit 50, your vagina doesn't have to dry up and fall off unless you wanted to. And there are women who are like done, closed for business, don't care, don't need the intimacy, don't need the headaches. You do you. But if you are interested in remaining sexually active and feeling good, I've had very, very few menopause symptoms over the last close to 15, 20 years because I've been properly medicated. So I know you are pressed for time. We're 3 minutes away from the buzzer. So Suzanne, you have been delightful. I will definitely have you on again, specifically talking about swinging. So tell people how they could reach you. I love your LinkedIn page. It is just so full of life and energy. And I think that's how I originally found you. And it's Noble, Suzanne, just the way it sounds. But tell people how that you want them to find you.
So you can find me at LinkedIn. Just type in Suzanne Noble. I'm the main one there. And my podcast is called Sex Advice for Seniors. And if you go on sexadviceforseniors.com, you can subscribe. I'm on Substack, but I'm also available on all the other popular podcast channels, iTunes, Spotify, etc. My singing is, depending on the thing, it's Dirty Blues Suze, I think, on Facebook. But again, you can just type in the Dirty Blues Show, Suzanne Noble, and you'll find me. And finally, Startup School for Seniors is just how it sounds, startupschoolforseniors.com. And we accept applications from anybody, anywhere in the world.
Love that, Suzanne. And, you're a woman after my own heart because I have multiple things that I do. If people want to find me online, I will be splitting my personality. The Geezer Proofer will have separate social media accounts from my business. But right now, you can find me at the On Switch, TheOnSwitch. If you would like to be a guest on my show, just please email me at thegeezerproofer@gmail.com. If you go to my Instagram, again, the On Switch Instagram, you'll find my link tree, which is basically a table of contents, and that has everything else that I write. And listen to my podcast. I'm up to almost 40 episodes and we'll be recording throughout what I'm calling the Hot Woman Summer. You can find me on Spotify, Apple, wherever you happen to listen to your podcasts. And I'm recording today from my podcast studio called Pod Populi, Podcast for the People. If you're thinking of launching your own podcast, it's a great plug and play solution. So remember, boys and girls, try to be a beezer as opposed to a geezer and live your best life at any age. Thank you, Suzanne. Peace out.
Thank you.